Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our continuing reviews of Marvel's She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Joining me this week, of course, as always, from Enchantment of Eternity, it's Marc!
Hey everyone, how's it going? Good to be here.
Excellent. And of course, this week we are talking episode 5, Mean, Green, and Poured Straight into These Jeans. Which, yeah, I guess in a dating profile, wouldn't that grab your attention? Um, but yeah, this was kind of a fun one, and I have to say, in all fairness, I know kind of last week I was like, "Where's the show going?" I like some of it, but it's a little off sometimes. Um, I've got to say, this week I got kind of pulled and yanked right back into it. This is probably my favorite episode of the season so far. I mean, one, it was a shorter episode. It was only 30 minutes total. I think minus credits and everything, it's only about 22 minutes of actual story, which is about the same length, I think, as episode 2. So a very quick and direct episode. But I think to me, it kind of found that perfect balance of comedy and funny from the material and circumstance without having to necessarily lean into more goofy. Um, to me, the Titania stuff was kind of perfect as sort of a modern villainous take. As your antagonist isn't fighting you on the streets; they're fighting in the courtroom. You know, it's more of a poke and poke back and forth type of thing. I'm going to try and get one up on you, which is a fun kind of little take for this without having to give us battles all the time. Um, and I like the fact that the plot really did rely on the legal system in order to be resolved. Kind of unlike last week's whole magic thing where you could say, well, doesn't a magician just go and get the magician? This is an actual legal situation. It's in court. And the fact that it's trademarked underneath your expectations, you get this um, superhero name, and then you barely start to accept it, and now it's taken out from underneath you. I mean, it was just, to me, it was kind of a perfect blend of all the elements coming in. Additionally, the Avengers was awesome. They were cute, they're adorable. I want the merch right now. And we get a nice little tie-in towards a new superhero tailor, which you always seem to happen in a world. And that leads us to the nice little end scene and tease for next week. So for me, really, really a fun episode. Marc, what did you think of this week's adventure?
So, yes, this is going to be an interesting discussion. This is
Yes.
going to be an interesting role reversal because usually I've been historically in our discussions I've been the positive one, where
Mm-hmm.
you haven't been completely like negative on the episodes, but I think it's fair to say I've been more positive than you
Oh,
and
by
more
far, by far.
on this show. And for me, this is by far the worst episode of the show so far. Like, I really did not like this episode. Like I say, well, I would say this is a bad episode. Um, and I feel like I hope the show doesn't continue on this trend because I feel like I wouldn't like the rest of the show. Now, to be
Okay,
fair, a lot of it, I know sense of humor is very subjective. It's
sure.
very dependent on different people. And for my money, like this was not funny at all. Um, and I think a lot of that had to do with I feel very disconnected from, like, I'm not into the fashion world, so I didn't find that stuff funny. I'm not into perfume fragrances, so I didn't find that funny. And the stuff with well, we'll get more into the stuff with the
Sure.
Avengers, but those two characters I thought were I liked them in previous episodes, and here they seem completely out of character, and that whole storyline just annoyed me. Um, and yeah, I see. I like the silliness of it. Like for me, like the episode 3 with the shapeshifting elf, I still that was comedy gold. I still love that. Last week's episode with Donnie Blaze, I thought, and
Mm-hmm.
in Madison with two N's and a Y, not where you think. But actually, Madison's grown on me a lot from last week. The more I think about her, the more I like her and want to see her back.
Social media has a whole campaign for Madison and Wongers as a new show. So, yeah.
But yeah, and so for me, this is definitely my least favorite episode of the season. It was just yeah, I guess we'll get more into it, but I just we get dating. The worst thing about last week's episode was the dating app, and we get a return to that, which is the last thing that I wanted. I did not want to revive that bad storyline, and it seemed even worse in this episode because we've already been through it. So, yeah, there wasn't much about this episode I'd like.
Well, yeah, but you see, that's what's great. I mean, one of the reasons that I love having Marc on the show, and I always get a hoot when I get a chance to head over to his channel, is we see things in many ways very similarly, you know, and we'll have similar kind of critiques and sometimes different takes and stuff like that. But we always try to come onto it from a very kind of personal but understandable position where we can say this is why we like it and this is why we don't. So the fact that we can come at a show and be switching like this is just it's awesome, because you're right. It's very indicative of, like you said, sense of humor is very subjective, and what we may find funny, depending on where we live, depending on our cultural environment, depending on what we've done, what we've seen, our mood for the day, can really affect the lens that we see this. You were talking a lot about Harvey Birdman as the lens to look through it. For me, I was thinking this episode very much of Venture Brothers, which also an Adult Swim.
Right.
Slightly different take, but
I never got into that show. So tried watching it, couldn't get into it.
Which again might be an interesting insight of how we're sort of seeing this episode differently. So that's great. Oh, want to say hi to Alyssa Jean joining us in the chat. Sorry, Marc. Alyssa's on Team Darren this week.
I know.
Which is a nice little twist. Yeah, also really enjoyed this one. Still thinks episode 3 was her favorite, but this might be but this might be the second right there. Also, last week was her least favorite. So again, kind of interesting where we're all setting ourselves up here. Well, let's kind of jump into this, because as we got to sort of in the tease at the end of last week, this is all based around the fact that Titania has gone and trademarked She-Hulk and is using it for all of her products. Now, whether you know anything about beauty oil or beauty tonic or beauty water thing, to me, the whole idea of just being inundated in ads, in your drive to work, in billboards of just this name that was sort of thrown on you, now being teased and taunting you completely. I love that idea of sort of opening things up that way. Yeah. And I don't care, Darren. All right, perfect. Let me get into, sorry, I'm losing my position in my notes here, so I'm trying to do two things at once right here. So yeah, I guess it's the idea of and really the sort of basis of this episode is this, I think, is the Jennifer Walters accepting the She-Hulk persona. Because it's really, we're dealing a lot with her pushing it away. I didn't want to be She-Hulk. I didn't like it. I'm still Jennifer. And yet, being She-Hulk does have certain advantages, which she is starting to find, which I think is kind of a fun little bit there. And again, I think She-Hulk is always been one of those characters that has been about ownership of her identity and who she is. I mean, again, she's strong, she's beautiful, she is sexually, modern in the way that she approaches everything. She goes on dates. She it's not just this woman in the background. She was always someone that was kind of like very front and center with the accepting the confidence and level of who she is. And I think that's using that as the basis of this episode, I think was a good thing about that. from a conceptual standpoint, I guess we'll say is what did you think about the whole kind of aha, I've trademarked your name. Now what are you going to do about it?
Well, I will say the what you just brought up about how this is forcing She-Hulk to accept her name that she was rejecting. I think conceptually, yes, that works really good, and I think that's the one thing about this episode. I think for me that did work
Mhm.
is her having to fight for it. Now, as far as her like drive to work and their ads being everywhere and everything like that, like and they even like did the intro with like She-Hulk by Titania and all that. Like that, you know, it helped get the point across that she's being bombarded by this. So that was fine, I guess. But I just felt like they overdid it,
Okay.
particularly when is that her cousin, brother, or that
It's her brother Chad. Yeah, the other genius
brother,
in the family.
yeah. Yeah, when he comes in, it's like, oh, I have all these things for you to sign. Like for me, that scene should have been cut. Like to me, that was overdoing it, and I kind of groaned at that scene. But I mean, it did, as the whole thing was effective in getting across how the fact that she's being irritated that her name was stolen. So
Sure.
so it was definitely necessary. But I don't know. It just kind of went too long for me.
And the whole visit to the beauty store where they were literally selling snake oil, which I did appreciate.
Well, can
Trifetta
I?
masks are very good for your face. They tighten things up. They're very clean. Seriously.
So I just watched that scene again.
Hmm.
When and what was Jennifer hoping to accomplish by confronting Titania? It seemed to me that was not a smart move, not something that a smart lawyer would do. It seemed she was just there to vent and be like, "Stop using my name and don't sue me." But did she really think that would work?
Um, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, was that logical? No, not at all. I think that's merely the angry, like, that's it. I've had enough. I'm gonna find you, and you're gonna stop doing it. And but again, that's also the thing is,
Mm.
even when she walks in, it's like, oh, little children have to wait in line. She is so small, especially compared to her She-Hulk persona, which they emphasize several times through this. I think is part of that, like, what are you going to do coming in? This is not even you're not even on the right battlefield in that sense. You
I mean,
can't.
yeah, I was saying I think that the scene does help us set up exactly the kind of character Titania is.
Mhm.
And just for my money, maybe this will change as the show goes on. Like it makes sense for in universe, and there totally is people like this. I just personally find her an annoying character. Like
Sure,
I
sure. No,
don't like seeing her. There's a difference between like annoying, like a good villain, or annoying is like, please get off my screen. And for me, it was that second one.
okay. And I can't really dispute that. I think that they were going for that type of annoying character, and sometimes for some of us, it just hits it right on the nail, and you're like, great, you are a perfect incarnation because I don't want to watch you, but you're doing a great job. Uh,
uh, And I will say, I just found out. I wasn't sure, like the whole time when I saw episode one, and then when I saw it again in this episode, I'm like, is that same actress who was on The Good Place? And I found out definitively that it is. I was like, okay, so that's her, and I think she's a good actress. So there was that.
Sure. Yeah, like I say, sometimes you find that great frequency of annoying that just really hits some people. Um, so through all of this, we start to develop our B story, and we'll just sort of jump back and no, let's just go through the whole thing. Let's go through. We'll jump to our little B story and the superhero stuff as we after we deal with these things because again, it's a very short episode. There's really only like few different chunks. So we have the opening She-Hulk by Titania, very annoying. Titania is not going to stop it because you're right, Mark. Why would she? What did Jennifer expect to happen by marching in there? Um, but certainly when her boss calls her in and says, "Why is there a boost your booty smoothie billboard for She-Hulk. Yeah, what kind of law firm are you if you can't handle your own stuff? Uh, which actually, I did love this little scene. It's one of those kind of like stupid little transition ones with her boss. But I just love the fact where she starts to explain. He's like, I don't really care about any of that stuff. You just fix it. Or no, you're not going to fix it because representing yourself is stupid. And we get to meet our new lawyer. What did you think of our new fancy lawyer friend? I'm sorry, I did not write her name down, and that is horrible of me. Um, who leads on the case?
All right. Well, I wasn't quite sure what to make of her, to be honest. Like, she seemed like she was a good lawyer, but it seemed like she was being like unnecessarily like spiteful towards Jennifer, particularly when she kept complaining about the her outfit or whatever, and that of course that feeds into her bees story. But I don't know, that just made me I was kind of mixed feelings about this character.
Sure.
I don't want to get into like spoilers from the comics here, but I did read where this character goes in the comics, and that helped made me feel a bit better knowing kind of where this is headed. But yeah, I was just I didn't know how to feel about her really.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we might have seen her in one of the first couple of episodes in the background, or something made comment. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, the taller, more fancy, more well dressed, more put together lawyer in the firm that Jennifer's a little jealous of and wants to be best friends with, and that gets shot down pretty much immediately. So, yeah, I think we're just having again we're getting a lot of comparatives, I think, for Jennifer to who she is and who she wants to be, and the realization that maybe She-Hulk is the version of her that she wants to be. Um, and so I think all of this, again, they really emphasize her height and that difference and how well dressed that she is and how well presented and how coiffed. And I think they're really just trying to, again, push those differences um, for me. But you're right. It was one of those, well, you're a new person, and I guess we'll just go with you. Um, which gets us pretty much to our first actual in case or in court bit. Um, which I loved. Oh, I did like the little meeting there where she's talking about why would I copyright my name? Doctor Strange didn't, Thor didn't. Well, those are two people that use their real names.
Okay, I will admit I did like that joke.
But she's got again, a nice solid strategy. We used it first. It was used here. She's stealing it out of spite and to take advantage of it. And that's pretty much, again, really where all of these initial scenes go through, especially with the videos afterwards, is her saying, I'm not She-Hulk, I'm not She-Hulk, and then I am She-Hulk. A little repetitive and so on, but at least it gives us a reason to be in the courtroom, which I did kind of appreciate. And of course, more of just the constant products that are being thrown out. What was this, like a foot soaker scrub, I think, in the courtroom? Very unnecessary stuff. Sorry, just checking in here with the chat. Sorry, as an aside, apparently the leader has been confirmed to be the main villain of Captain America: New World Order, according to Alyssa Jean. Sources.
Oh yeah.
Sources.
I've heard that it was officially announced that it was a D23. So yeah, I've heard that as well. It has been officially confirmed. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or if you want to save that for later.
No, I just got that. No. We'll catch that stuff later. Actually, we'll do a little D23 preview for a TMI with Rob coming up on Saturday nights. Tell you more about that later.
No, but I have more to say about our theory because the leader is behind the, what are they called, those people that attacked her, try to get her blood. Like after hearing that, for me, it's like almost confirms that the leader is behind it. Like
that would be the perfect tie-in to tie this back into one of the big main films. So
the Wrecking Crew, that's what they're called.
The Wrecking Crew, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because some people, I have read reviews after watching this episode. Some people were still convinced it was Titania, and I was like, I don't think it was. I really don't think it was Titania who hired the wrecking crew. I still think it was the leader. But
Well, no, because I think, again, this very much establishes Titania is an antagonist from a social standpoint,
yes,
not a villain standpoint, and that's kind of great. I mean, there's an interesting arc between Titania and Jen Walters through the comics and so on, even to, I wouldn't necessarily say a friendship, but a certain kind of like understanding with each other, which would be an interesting direction to go into by the end of this, or to keep it later on if they do multiple seasons. But no. That's what I loved about this is Titania is not, I'm going to fight you and we're going to be, tearing down the city against each other type of antagonist. It's the ones that, like, again, copyrights your name and screws with your life just to get at you. A modern one, a more John Cusack type kind of villain, I suppose.
Well, one thing I will say that kind of, I think I heard another reviewer bring up, and it did kind of bother me about this episode, that her powers, or Titania's powers, were not even mentioned in this episode, which that kind of annoyed me. They could have at least like had some line that she had some powers or something, but it seemed like they. And what was the deal with her, like, attacking She-Hulk at the end of the first episode? And I don't know. It seemed like they didn't touch on that as much as they should have.
No, and I agree. They definitely could have spent some time doing it. They could have gotten rid of Chad scene, and put that in as a discussion. I think that would have been a good switch of time use. Yeah, I think there was one comment I think she said is like a tall, slightly super powered person. I think is how she described Titania in this episode. So it's like, yeah, I think she's like big and slightly strong. She got like a whiff of superhero syndrome serum. Not much, just enough to kind of like, I could throw a desk.
Yeah,
that's my ability.
They did mention that, but I wanted more than that, honestly.
Sure. So obviously what the court comes down to is who established the name first. Despite the videos, what's the one thing that you can do is, oh, that's right, we had a dating profile. Remember last week, folks, with a whole bunch of dates? This is where it comes to. And look, I have to tell you, part of me was very annoyed that they were like, wow, we just did this last episode and we're going right back to that well right away. You're not even waiting an episode or two to pull these guys back. On the other hand, to me, this was a better payoff than the dating bit last week, because that was just annoying dates, where I think the way they set up by reading in her profile of putting in, was it mean green and poured right into these jeans, and what is she looking for? A man with a sturdy back and a king-sized bed. LK or JK, that's too many JKs. But to me, this leaned into more of that sexual modernism, and acceptance for her, as opposed to last week was just, I'm going out on dates. This was like, hey, I'm going out on dates to have sex because I'm a woman and I like to do that just like guys do, and that's my thing, and why can't I do that if very other people do that? I think that kind of leaned into that to me a little bit better with this, for like, God, I don't believe I went out with that guy. That was the best I could do. And then, okay, this is a nice guy, but he certainly wouldn't go out with me in my regular Gen form, would only go out with She-Hulk. So while it was annoying kind of going back, I did think it was a better use of that storyline in a broader sense of describing sexual liberation, and She-Hulk's ownership of her identity, versus last week was just painful dates. I know you just didn't want to see these people back at all, did you?
No, to me, this doesn't justify last week's storyline. To me, this is just more of the same.
Sure.
Because we see them again on court being douchebags. So for me, it was just like a replay Like, instead of dating them being douchebags, they're on the stand being douchebags. Um, and, and granted, there is a thing here about, oh, she has to humiliate herself in order to win the case. But I don't know. There was something about that I didn't really find that interesting, because I thought that, first of all, I think the premise of the judge saying, well, you have to prove that you said that you wanted to be She-Hulk, felt very sitcomish to me.
Oh yeah, very much so. Oh yeah, I
And
agree.
so that kind of threw me out of it. So even though the point is she has to humiliate herself to win the case, since the circumstances to which why she has to do this is, in my opinion, contrived, I didn't care about it. didn't really follow it. So yeah, for me, I just did not want to see these douchebags again at all, and it's just like reliving last week's episode. But in my opinion, actually kind of worse, because I had to go through it a second time.
It was just the wound hadn't healed, and we're just ripping the Band-Aid off right now. See, I could. That's what I'm saying. I can appreciate that. The fact that it was like immediately afterwards, it was like, and yes, this does fall into your standard sitcom, story of the week trope. Is it all has to be self-contained within this episode? So the fact that Titania was able to trademark it, get products out, and they were able to go to court and come back, all of this before while she was on dates, and I mean, trying to figure out the timing of how this all would work out is completely ridiculous.
I mean, well, to be fair, there's a lot of, I'm willing to suspend disbelief.
Well, yeah, but that's just the format.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, I completely agree. You've got to have all these. It's just, I guess, if you're enjoying it, you're fine with the format, and if it's not entertaining you, then the format constrictions can be very annoying. Just looking in the chat here real quick. Ramona Floyd jumping in. Hope you're feeling better there, Ramona Floyd. The dating episodes you guys didn't like came back around in case, so it wasn't so useless afterwards. Yeah, exactly. Also remarking that the one guy gave off very much Elon Musk vibes. Yeah, with the drink and the.
So yeah, are we gonna talk about him, because Alyssa also mentioned them in the chat, and I heard a theory about him.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. Yeah, I guess this goes back to the dude Todd, who's of course the client, also a client for the finer lawyer. Yeah, seen videos that had shown him side by side audio with him and the dude in the mask in the wrecking crew, and I'm buying that that's the same guy. That would make sense to keep things sort of contained.
Yeah, and one of the things they pointed out on his date with her in last week's episode, he asked if her skin was impenetrable.
Right, and also did call her a specimen.
Yes,
the one that called her a specimen.
Yes,
so
yes.
If he is fascinated with superheroes and wants to be one himself, I could do this. I still like the leader being behind it better, because I think that's more fun.
Well, he can still be involved, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that is, I haven't seen anything on that. And that's great. Yeah. So Ramona Floyd, struck with coronavirus, feeling much better now. So I'm glad that you're doing much better. Yes, they did troll the audience with the Shrek comment, of course.
Yeah, I did like that, actually. Yeah. But I wonder if they wrote that before, like, the audience started doing that. It seems like, because a lot of the stuff, like last week's episode 2, got into directly sort of mocking the backlash, and I wonder if like they just predicted it, or if they released some promotional material and they started getting a backlash, and so they wrote that into the show. I don't know.
They might have. I mean, it even been a later thing that they were able to do a voiceover with, do an ADR.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and see, did she seeing that, or is that why someone was walking back and she just said that so they could put the audio in? I think that there's opportunities with that, so I'd have to go back and take a look.
Oh yeah, so Alyssa in the chat says, I think it's still the leader. Todd just works for the leader. I buy that.
Okay, I would go with that. Leader not making very good decisions with this control there, man. He and Wong need to have a conversation. They both have some like personnel issues they got to sort out there. Um, all right, so yeah, and basically that just sort of wraps things up. We see the guys; they all say yes, you were She-Hulk, and case dismissed. Go to the bar, have a nice thing, and we get our tie-in to be, which we're going to use to jump back in about Jen getting a new suit. Jen needs suits because she does. She does look like a what is it? A football player wanting to plead no contest to a DUI. That's exactly what she looks like. That suit does
I
not fit her
maybe
well.
maybe I know nothing about fashion, but it looked like a just a suit to me. I didn't know that that line didn't really. It just struck me as that lawyer being like
Yeah.
an asshole, basically.
It, oh no,
Like,
it totally is. It totally is. It's a basically it's an off the rack bit. Nothing is
uh,
tailored. You just had I need a large. I need an extra large, and that's what I'm wearing. And it's not all fine and tailored. And that's one thing they kept poking on with our other attorney is how much fashion that she was, how well she worked. What you say? Where does she shop? It's probably someplace that has valet parking. Just hitting that kind of high end, which again is tying us into our B version. And look, I'm not necessarily a fashion person. If you saw how I would dress, you would completely agree. Um, so, and again, even with the whole like beauty products and things, I have some knowledge because of my work, but it's not something that I necessarily think of or focus on. To me, it's just kind of the background of the introduction of the type of characters that you have to have in this ever expansive universe. Um, Especially again, if we're talking about a Harvey Birdman slash Venture Brothers view of the world, you're gonna have certain characters, and one of the characters that you have to have is the superhero tailor. Everybody's got to get their outfits from somewhere, because not everybody can sew their own suits. The idea that Spider-Man, that Peter Parker is at home, trying to get the ribbing done right on his spider suit while he's in between classes and stuff, it's completely ridiculous. You got to have professionals do these things. Um, you're like, do you?
yeah,
You just
I
accept
don't.
that people have it.
Yeah, I don't really. I don't know. I don't really. I don't know. I guess maybe, but I don't know if I care to see them on screen. I don't know. But and I was gonna say like Tony Stark just builds like has his trillions of dollars and builds these powerful suits, and that's how they get the suits. That's what I assume.
Sure, but we all don't have a Jarvis. Is all that I'm saying is, and you're right. To me, this is where you have that split of the kind of like more serious MCU and the more goofy MCU.
Oh sure, yeah.
In the goofy MCU, you have a tailor guy that everybody goes to, and he makes the super invulnerable suits that are. Do you need something that's bulletproof? Do you have fire? Do you have my stuff stands up to the most rigorous combat potential? No, in the real world you don't. I mean, in the real world you don't have superheroes, but I'm saying in your kind of tougher MCU, you would have to go to like some Wakanda people to do that, to make it out of vibranium, or you'd have to be a Tony Stark that can use his resources of his company in order to design his own battle suit and things. When you're dealing with Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, one of the places they're going to go is Hal's, the guy in the back room who makes the super suits for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I know this is a silly comedy. I don't mind it being silly, and I don't mind it getting into this detail. But again, this is just my perspective of stuff of what I'm into.
Sure.
And there's been characters like this in many other shows and movies, and this seems just like a repeat of that, another caricature. And I was just never into that. A lot of people compared it to the person who designed the costumes for the Incredibles.
Yeah,
What's his-
yeah.
And
Bona, I have to look that up.
and
I'm
I
sorry,
never
it's been a
liked
while.
I never liked that character. I found that character annoying. It just seemed like the fashion cliche type. And again, this is just maybe coming from someone who's not interested in fashion. I just didn't care for this at all.
Sure, sure. Besides, we all know that ultimately everybody goes to Reed Richards because he has the unstable particles that he makes his suits out of, which is allows it to stretch and set on fire and change all of that. Sorry,
But
deep dive. They haven't introduced Fantastic Four yet. They can't use Reed. What
but
if he
here's my
started as
other
a tailor?
here's my other point with this. Like, I understand, like, I kind of, so when that fashion person was being like a diva and like, oh, I build these fireproof things and stuff that has weapons in it and all that, and so why should I make you just a suit? I kind of agreed with him there because I think they don't need to go to this like elaborate high tech person. They could just go to any big and tall shop and like custom make a suit for her. Now,
Sure.
granted, she wouldn't be able to shrink and grow big in it, and it would have to go a big step up for them. But but that's not what's required for this particular situation. Her lawyer just says get a better suit, so why not just go to the big and tall shop and custom make a suit, and then
Sure.
she can worry about the growing big and tall later. But then, of course, we wouldn't get these fun scenes if she did that. But
Spandex.
just how my
Spandex is your friend. Yeah.
that's just how my brain was working, like this whole scene.
Edna, thank you, Ramona Floyd. Edna Moore from Incredibles. I make them all explosive, fireproof, run fast, and yeah, very annoying shoot. I love that, but yeah, it has become one of those tropish types things. And to me, this is, you're right. It's that line of, are you going with the silly, or are you annoyed with the goofy? And I think that's always kind of a fine line to sort of tread.
But yeah, and I guess your knowledge varies on that because
Sure.
in other situations I'm more willing to go with the goofy, but I guess it's when it leads to humor I find really funny. Where in this case it didn't, so I guess I get more trapped up in how silly it is, just because I don't
Well,
find it humorous.
Well, yeah, because the other, and yes, we will use this to actually tie into our final little scenes here when we get to it. Um, the only other kind of suit designer that we have seen in the Marvel Universe is the Netflix Marvel Universe, and that's Marvin, who's making the suits, made the Daredevil suit, and made the suit for, it was originally Fisk, was making suits for Fisk, and then made the battle suit for Daredevil, who of course was like a specialty guy, and there was sort of a reason why he was the one person that would do that.
It's been a while since I've seen this shows. I don't remember Marvin.
Yeah, he was the he actually eventually would become Stiltman if you wanted to really follow the lore
Still?
and stuff
Oh, you mean in the
in
comics?
the comics. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I can't remember his last name, but yeah,
Uh,
he's the only other kind of manufacturer that we have. But of course, he was, had some certain issues, but he was just kind of like a manufacturer, a builder, a guy, not like a fashionista that was going to make something fabulous and wonderful. And you're right. This is where they lead a little bit more into the Edna Moore, which I could have done without. You didn't need to go into the kind of goofy, where the angry designer person, because that's what makes you cool in the designer world. Um,
there was one scene where we kind of skipped over. I didn't know if you were planning on
I do
circling.
want to jump back to that because I know, yeah, we did, which is getting into the place, which
The
to me,
Avengers.
well, and I love this in the sense that it's like, you have the secret shop, but this is the secret shop behind the secret shop. It's a boba, and behind the boba is off-market merchandise. And behind the off-market merchandise, then the real stuff comes in. So I had to, I appreciated the kind of layering, especially how they're like, Alonzo sent me the drip broker. It's like, okay, so what do you want? And then Nikki tried to speak Chinese, and he's like, what is that, Chinese? I'm not Chinese. How do we get in? What's the secret word? And the fact it's like you think you get in, and it's all knockoffs.
Mm.
Which, look, I love the Avengers. It's just because it is so ridiculous. Exactly what you said. Oh, you don't like the Avengers? They're the Avengers, which I
Yeah.
think Alyssa is more of a fan
Yeah.
of. Um, and it's great because you have the Gray Hulk, not Green Hulk. You've got Thor with a shovel and not a hammer. You just have a color difference, I
Oh.
think, for Iron Man. Captain America has the eagle on his shield and the star on his head. And, it's like they just sort of like switch things just a little bit. Hawkeye has like a claw, a bird's claw at the end of his arrow. Uh, Black Widow is just a girl in black. I mean, I don't know what else they did with her in that one. I couldn't really see, but I love that idea. Also, they were super cute. I showed my kid, and he was like, "Those are the cutest things I've ever seen." So I think they did a good job appealing to the audience in that sense. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
thoughts?
I did like the Avengers thing, and it does make sense. I have in my life maybe perhaps bought some products similar and seen how true to life it is, and and so yeah, again, this is what She-Hulk does good. It takes like the minutia and real life situations and puts them in the MCU. But what I really didn't like about these scenes were the way that I can't remember her friend and the other lawyer works at the law firm. It seems like he got a serious IQ reduction in this episode. It seems like he was acting like idiotic and goofy, and I don't recall him behaving that way in
It did
previous.
feel like a character shift. I have to say, I was like, "Is this the same guy that we saw before?" Because
Yeah,
he did seem a little different.
and when he talked about collecting sneakers again, like I felt so disconnected. Like it's another way I felt disconnected from this episode. It feels like it's appealing to a different kind of fan base than than what I am, which is fine. But and the way that she was behaving, and the way that they were like we're dancing, and the guy was in the cameras, like I can still see you, like to me that was inconsistent with their characters, and
Sure.
so I didn't really find it funny. In fact, the whole thing annoyed me, although as I said, I appreciated the Avengers joke, like that was fun.
No. I kind of get that. It's funny because, and I think maybe you're right because it did seem such an odd character shift from before. And again, in the chat, let us know if we're seeing things a little different from everyone else. Um, but you're right, it did seem such a character shift. I didn't mind that because I'm one of those goofy people that will dance and be like, "Yeah, oh, that's right, we're right in front." So again, I think I could identify that a little bit more. The fact that they're standing there with the t-shirt and cap, and he's got the Thor hammer and shield. It's like we have to dress completely ridiculous and buy this merchandise just to talk at someone through a door. Um, I saw you shrug. You're lying. No, yes, it is completely ridiculous, but I think just to me it worked with the tone of the scene. But I see exactly what you mean because his behavior did seem different character wise than what we've seen before. Now, he did bring a nice basket with a map of where to poop, and I appreciate that. But yeah, he seemed more subdued before, and
uh,
now he seems a lot more like
and
goofy and jumping out and
I
doing things.
really don't like that change to the character. That makes me like this character less.
Okay.
If this is the direction, I'd rather see more of like they're having the map to where to poop. Like that's considerate. Like that's that's actually a nice thing to do. It doesn't make him come off as goofy as he did in this episode. But anyway, wanted to address what Alyssa's saying in the chat about the sneaker collection. Apparently, I missed this, but apparently there was in the animated credits there was a picture of the sneaker collection. Apparently, there was a Cyclops sneaker and a Wolverine sneaker. Some more sort of X-Men things sneaking in
Sure.
there.
Yeah, sneaking in stuff like that. That's fun. And again, with the fourth wall breaks that you have that you're kind of permitted with She-Hulk, you can kind of do that and be like, we can refer to Cyclops without there actually being a Cyclops to refer to, or Wolverine or something, because it's just for the audience. Also, it's the tail end animation, so that's really kind of more gifts for us as well. Um,
Hmm.
Ramona Floyd, is he a shapeshifter? It could be. I think they were probably doing one thing with the character and then they wanted to move in a different direction, and they just did, the first season of any show is always kind of working out kinks and characters and directions and tones and
Sure.
things like that. So
I
um
mean, and Alyssa's saying she didn't find his character inconsistent because we barely knew him, which I suppose is fair. Like, but if that's the case, I don't like this direction that they're going in. I think they could have taken them in a different direction.
well, because they also referred to a certain history and past when he's asking for the favor, and she's like, well, it's the standard cost, also a favor plus interest. It's like, yeah, that's
Mm,
right. So you're getting this much longer kind of relationship between these people than what we've been able to see. So I think that does kind of like shift things up a little bit. So yeah, so we get to meet our big fancy costumer person, and they is finally intrigued by the idea of a suit that can fit tiny little mouse Jen and giant She-Hulk, both at the same time. That again is not just connected with sections of spandex. Um, I don't know how that would look in the courtroom. Probably not as professional. Um, and yeah, you could just get a giant suit, but where fun would you be with that? Also, this will, I believe, at the end where we get, which is effectively a mid-credit scene, though it is tacked on kind of at the end of this when she goes in to pick up her suit, and he also has made a something else for her, which I believe will be the combat She-Hulk suit that we saw in the ads, and we'll probably end up seeing next week, which is the kind of a shorter legged, almost like a onesie type kind of thing for her. And that's just my guess. Um, but what we really get out of this is our hint for next week, which I think is the perfect way to do this. Um, and that is a complaint about was it privacy, and we do get to see a golden helmet with horns looking very similar to Daredevil's helmet, which does explain why he would have a different suit. He's going to somebody else getting new things, and it's a new design. So I kind of like that, just in the idea of like, oh, that's why it's gold as opposed to red. He's getting a new upgrade, and that's what this is. Um, because he's over on Disney Plus now, and he has to look a little bit different. Did you like our little tease in there? Does that get you excited that we're hopefully going to actually see Matt Murdock's return next week? Was it just like,
well,
oh, that's our mid-credit bit? What did you think of our little wrap up
Well,
here on
no, it
things?
didn't get me excited at all because I've already seen him in the trailer. I already know he's going to be in the show from the trailer. So why do I care? This would have been a lot more effective if they didn't put him in the trailer. But
Agreed, agreed. No, I mean,
just,
I
I
I
mean,
can't argue with that.
don't get me wrong. It's like it was a nice little hint of ooh, look what's coming up next. But it's not like I'm not excited over it. I'm not going crazy over it. I might have been if had he not been in the trailer. Like even if it was like confirmed, like from like spoiler sources online, whatever, I would still be excited. But being in the trailer, that's an official thing. So it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
okay, Daredevil's coming. I knew that,
Sure,
but as and I think Alyssa mentioned something in the chat a while ago, and I completely agree, is that she didn't think that Matt Murdock would go to that snooty fashion guy, and I agree. I don't think I don't really see him doing that, but hey, the show needs to happen, I guess. I don't
sure.
know. I keep hearing talk about they're gonna change, like I don't know. I'm a bit iffy about how Disney is going to handle, or Marvel MCU is going to handle Daredevil, because I hear talk that it's going to be different Daredevil than the Netflix show. But I like, I don't know. Because I hope they mean it's just the tone around it's going to be different. Because I hope they don't erase the history of the Netflix shows. Like they don't have to acknowledge it, but don't contradict it.
Sure. Well, I mean, one positive thing is it hasn't been written yet.
Yeah.
They just got cast. They're just together. They're just gathering things. So they haven't. I don't think there's anything on paper. They certainly haven't gone into production or anything like that. So any rumor on what the tone is going to be is really kind of pure speculatory at this point, educated with how Disney has been doing things. Um, I do believe that the Matt Murdock we will see in She Hulk isn't going to be behaving the same as he would in the show because again he's appearing in a sitcom, so that doesn't mean
Sure.
he's going to be doing pratfalls, but you might see a little bit more of a levity side. I think even
Well,
the first interview
and
with Cox
I
about that.
yeah, I'll be perfectly fine with that. It's like what they did with Abomination or Wong. Like they came off as more comedic and silly in this. That's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you put them in the silly show, that I just don't want them to drastically change it too much, especially to set the tone of change it going forward.
Well, one, and I've been recently rewatching Daredevil, the Netflix series, and it's certainly not that the old movie, no. And yeah, it is. I mean, it is a little darker, but I think seeing what we're going to see with Andor and Secret Invasion, I think will educate us on the tone of where they may be going with it, because both of those seem to be a little more serious, a little more heavy in the way that they're approaching things, at least from an advertising standpoint. Um, and I think they're going to see that if Disney Plus is going to survive as a streaming channel, they have to be able to appeal to multiple genres. They have to be able to appeal to multiple age groups, and they can't necessarily have everything be strictly for for quadrant. I think they may have to lean into some stuff is maybe a little more teen oriented, and some stuff is a little more kid oriented. Uh, so I'm hoping that you'll still get kind of the same general approach, minus like heads being bashed off with doors. I think
Yeah,
they
and
might zoom away from that.
that's exactly what I'm hoping for. I mean, obviously they have to change the tone slightly to fit in the MCU, but I want them to mostly keep it, not change it too drastically. Uh, Now I
Yeah,
did want to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say no, and I think that there is a way to do an effective soft reboot where you don't really have to mention it, or you're just like, there were some things, but that was a while ago. Because you have to remember, anything in the Netflix series all happened pre-snap. I'm not going to call it the blip. Um, so there is now an additional 5 years plus on top of everything. So there's been a lot of changes that go on. So I think as long as you just set up like he's been Daredevil for a while and he's been fighting Fisk for a while, you really don't need to do a whole lot more. I don't think you need to tie into any of the stories specifically. I think you can just like again soft reboot it without having to acknowledge anything. I think to me that would be the smartest way to do it.
So I did want to address a listener in the chat that says they don't have the right to Netflix material, which I actually thought I heard otherwise. I
No, I,
heard that the rights reverted from Netflix back to Marvel, which is why those shows are on Disney Plus now.
yeah, that
Because
was what happened. Yeah, because they had to wait a certain number of years before they could reuse those characters or those actors or anything. Now,
yeah,
you
which
know,
is why they waited so long, and that's why Netflix canceled everything because they didn't want to help out their competitor Disney. And after they did, the rights reverted back.
right, exactly. So now, whether or not the specific storylines they have access to, I don't know. I still think everything
Mm.
basically reverted back. Um, but I
I
think,
mean, but even if they could never reference anything specific that happened in the shows, but they could still use the characters, I think they could be. I think fine. I don't think they need to reboot it and say these are totally different characters. They could do, as you say, a soft reboot.
yeah. And depending on even who you talked with the actor, I know Vincent D'Onofrio, when questioned about his approach to Fisk in Hawkeye, he saw it as this is the same person years later who has gone through changes and things like that. But he was viewing it as an actor as it being
Mm.
the exact same character that we saw before. Um, which honestly, as long as the actor comes from it from that standpoint, I don't think we will question anything because we'll just see that even if there are kind of shifts in behavior. Because again, tonal wise, they're going to have to do a little bit different. He's older, he's been working out, he got some super serum cream and made him tougher. However you want to explain any of that stuff, I think it ends up working. um I guess I just did like the kind of reference, and the fact is last week we finished the adventure, and then it's like, here's our hint for next week. You're being summoned because Titania is suing you.
Mm.
To me, this is how I viewed the helmet thing in that one, is kind of like, perfect, we've wrapped that up, and now here's the hint of what we're going to go and see next week. um,
Sure. Yeah.
which I kind of like. But you're right, it would have been a stronger reveal if he hadn't been already plastered all over the ass.
Well, I mean, I think it works in that regard. In the
Mhm.
regard of, as I said in last week, is Titania serving her papers, and this week they're saying, "Hey, Daredevil's going to appear next week." That works. I'm just not like, "Oh my God, it's Daredevil," because I saw him in the trailers.
Sure. That excitement has already been ruined. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Um, all right. Well, I think that covers everything with the episode. Did we want to chat back with the leader stuff, or D23? Was there something else that you wanted to kind of jump back
Oh,
on there?
I think we addressed that already. Basically saying that I think the leader's the one responsible for the wrecking crew. I still
Hmm.
do.
So I'm looking in with the chat. Um, just talking about ownership over things. Plus, you have the whole mom society about rated R content on Disney Plus. Yeah, as I said, and I know when they brought the Netflix stuff over, they did like do a redo of their parental permissions and stuff like that. So they're
Nah.
trying to figure a way to
Oh,
do it.
they have all kind of adult content on Disney Plus now.
Yeah.
Before they were just saving it for Hulu, but all their international. And I was talking to people in like Australia and stuff. All their international one, they don't have Hulu, so all that stuff went to Disney Plus anyway. So America's just catching up with that already had all the R-rated stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you want to go into the craziness of the mechanics of all these streaming services and ownerships, I don't think Hulu's necessarily going to last. It looks like Discovery Plus and HBO are going to end up merging together as well and not be separate apps.
Oh, I thought. Oh, okay, right.
Uh, I mean, I've heard things kind of flowing each way, but whatever it is, it's just a continuing consolidation, as you're going to have
Well,
your
I
like
mean,
3 or 4 apps.
Hulu's owned by Disney, so it's not going to go under.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, but whether
but it
they'll end up
depends on
using
what
it or not.
Disney wants to do with it. Yeah, I mean, at the moment they're doing their bundle thing that seems to be working out for them. But I guess if they lose enough interest, they might just spill it. Just consolidate it into Disney Plus.
Yeah, so I'm seeing the consolidations, and that may end up being it. You have your Disney ESPN Plus mix, which I guess they're already having. Um, so I want to also mention Eric Scott in the chat. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Deborah Ann Wall must come back in any Daredevil. I want actually the whole cast. I even like Foggy, and some people don't, but I like Foggy. But Deborah Ann Wall, definitely, I completely agree. She is beautiful and a great actor. That last scene in season 3 between her and Vincent D'Onofrio was just
Oh yeah, season 3 of Daredevil was just a masterpiece all around.
yeah. As I said, I've been rewatching it just for some fun, and I'm in the midst of Defenders because I want to bridge that into season 3. And oh man, it is a sharp step to go from watching 2 seasons of Daredevil to the Defenders.
Yeah.
Again, no harsh on everyone like that, but just
that was such a disappointment. That could
the
have been
crew
so
that you
good.
have behind making things, and the visionaries, and you got to maintain a tone. I guess
But
that's all I'm saying.
apparently, well, I heard the vague rumor. I don't know how true it is, but I heard that other Netflix Marvel characters like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage will return, but not in their own stuff. They will be appearing in other material.
I think that that's perfect. I think that's
Yeah.
a better use of them than on their own. Certainly, with Cage and Rand, they're better together at the very least
Oh yeah. I don't
than
know
by
if Rand's
themselves.
gonna return, but we'll
I'm
see.
fine if you. I mean, look, it's look. We'll go into a whole long discussion one day about that. But I think we'll wrap things up. Do want to mention with all this D23 stuff over on Smirking Gun Reviews, we're going to be joining Rob on Saturday night. I think 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have actually a good long extended chat about D23, the news that came out of it, all that type of stuff. So if you're interested, be sure to check over Smirking Gun Reviews, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern, Saturday night. We're talking D23 stuff. Myself, Mark, Rob, maybe some other people will show up. We'll find out. But I think that will wrap us up. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us in the archives. If you did like and enjoy this, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, all those things. Everybody here in the chat, nice discussions going on. Alyssa Jean, of course, joining us in there. Ramona Floyd, Eric Scott. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate that. Mark, what's going on your end, man? What you been doing?
So I have been doing House of the Dragon live discussions, which of course we'll be doing again this coming Monday night, every Monday night. Interested to see at the halfway point of the season this week, so that will be really interesting. And also, Star Trek Lower Decks just released my review for the latest episode today, and we'll be covering that every week as well. And Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Hopefully, I'll have more time to do my review this week. Last week, I did just the 6 minute thing when I went blah, 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 because I didn't have much time. But maybe I'll be able to go into it a bit more this week. And then also random Star Trek stuff and fun. But anyway, Darren, thanks so much for having me. Of course, it's always great to be here. And at the start of this, we totally disagreed on this episode. At the start of it, Alyssa was saying, keep it civil. And I think we did. I think this was a very civil, friendly conversation. It's great getting that different point of view and trying to sort of see your perspective on it.
Well, and that's where we like to come from. That's why I like having you on, having Alyssa, having Rob. I love because everybody brings an interesting point of view into the discussion. And this is not, look, we're not professional reviewers. We're not getting paid by the New York Times or anything to do all of this stuff. I mean, if they want to throw some money our way, we're going to be happy to take that. But we're fans, we're appreciators, and the way we approach things is, do you like it? Do you not like it? Why? You can't just throw out, it's crap. There's women in it. I don't like that they've changed the race of this person that in my mind it was. Those are dumb reasons.
Darren, you're totally right. And that's what you may say, that we're not professionals, but I think we are, we're reviewers, even though we're, amateurs. We're not
Sure.
getting paid big bucks to do it, but we're still, and what makes someone a reviewer is to not just say I like or dislike something, is to say why. And we both did that. Yeah. So
and that's, because that's always what sort of pushed me in doing these shows and doing these discussions. I want to know why something is good and why is it bad. It helps educate me. It helps me look for things that I'm going to enjoy more, and helps me avoid things that I know that will hurt my brain. And I think if all of us can do that, it's just a better way of approaching things. So thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday at 6 o'clock to talk about episode 6 and hopefully a little Mac Murdock action. Until then, y'all take care, and we'll catch you later on. Bye-bye. And now we